Hello, folks. My name is JD. I am writer, creator, chief correspondent, seller, whatever you want to say in this video, of the new TV series I created in the sense that I wrote the screenplays for Militia, which right now I'm currently looking for a producer and actors that want to be in the show. Now, Militia is the name of the show. Very, very, very simple title. Why? Because I didn't think that you needed a whole lot of grace. You know, in a title. You didn't want to say, like, the militia of the United States, because that could be in any number of contexts. You didn't want to say the militia of the future, because obviously it's not in the future. It takes place in current day. So what you were left with was, well, it's about a militia, or more precisely, the First Mountain Militia of Maine. Now, this militia is a fictitious militia. It ain't a real militia. It's not like the second Maine militia, or the first Maine militia, or the Ninth Mountain Montana militia, or the Freeman militia, or anything like that. This is fiction. But it takes place here in Maine. Now, why did I choose Maine? Well, because I live in Maine. And it's kind of rednecky. I'll admit it. I'm from a very small area. People love their guns, they love their God, and they love America. Same as any other place you would expect to find a militia. So why wouldn't Maine have more than a few of them? But more precisely, it takes place near Caribou, Maine. Why? Because people know where that is. Hey, it's Caribou. It's up there by Warren. You know, we used to defend ourselves from the Soviets up here. You can imagine there's a few people didn't take too kindly when, you know, that was gone. What is a militia? Let's start with the simple questions. What is a militia? A militia is a group of individuals that have designed themselves in a paramilitary-like outfit to defend their country and their community. That's the simplest and yet most defined explanation of what a militia is. And that's what our gentlemen do. Everyone from Duke to Bullseye are members of their community. They're members of the local church, or in some of our guys' cases, the mosque. They don't take particularly too well to foreigners, especially Koreans or criminals, like drug dealers, meth cookers, and the like. Now, as you may imagine, gun control being the issue makes militia kind of the sort of fad thing right now. I mean, if you were looking for that fall series to replace whatever crappy show that was going off the air, militia might fill the bill. You know, it's either going to be that or it's going to be a crime drama or, God help me, 9th Space Cavalry. But militia just might be that show as well. It's trendy. It's the in fashion, and you also have a series of shows with a very similar theme. That is, not so quite lawful people running around helping their community while they're evading the FBI or the ATF or the DEA or that type of thing. You know, in the same genre as The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Sons of Anarchy. Well, Militia kind of goes down that same path of vigilante criminal justice. You know, you're watching the show about, quote, the bad guys. But at the same point, Militia takes a very, very drastic, I mean, that's the genre itself, it has a very centered orientation. we're kind of off in left field in the sense that when our guys break the law, they're doing so out of not only a sense of duty to their community, but patriotism for their country. A militia does believe in their community. You can go to Montana or North Carolina, and you're going to see that same devotion to the community. Now, having said that, there's the other side. The side there's the side the militia don't want people to see. That is a bunch of people with overpowered firearms taking vigilante justice in their own hands. Most likely, most of the time, you don't see that part of the militia. What you do see is the community orientation part. Whether they're taking over dinner at the church, or volunteering for the community, or doing a school production. And unlike the other shows where this was largely the woman's job, the militia actually does this firsthand. Whether it's Bullseye taking a position of helping the school out, or Potter taking the coffee hour at the church, there's always the sense of moral duty and obligation. Corporal William Duke Potter retired. Retired. Gave about 40 years to his country. You know, going from the post-Vietnam era of service through the first and second Iraq wars and Bosnia in between, and the Cold War. I mean, this is your Cold War guy. The Soviets are coming. The Soviets are coming. He felt with Loring Air Force Base taken out of commission, which was the United States' first defense against the Soviet attack, it was incumbent upon him, upon his retirement, to organize the people of Maine in the off chance that the Soviets or the Iraqis or the North Koreans or Canada wanted to invade. Don't laugh. There's actually history there. Potter, Potter, on the other hand, has a distinct set of rules. There's a code of conduct that you follow. You know, he ain't too shy about his beliefs either. Whether that's his belief on racism, or his belief on the Second Amendment, or his belief on the chain of command. That is, he answers to the governor or any general that asks him to do something. Potter as well has kind of the flair look that you would expect for a show like this. The guy looks like he had been cast for G.I. Joe as a jarhead, and then having finished that job up, got lost on his way to the A-Team for the extra shot there. He wears the Mountain Militia's parade Arctic colors, that is the gray and white camouflage. He has his rank in patches, and he keeps sergeants. And the sergeants answer directly to him and the rest of the members to the sergeant in charge of them. That is that the Maine militia is broken down into units. You have the first unit, you have the second unit, you have the auxiliary unit. Now, George the Tank Wilson, or Sergeant George Wilson, isn't that much younger than Duke. He's probably maybe 10 years younger, not that much, in his late 30s. And he was a career military guy till the military kicked him out. That is to say that George did his 3 tours in Iraq. He did a tour in Afghanistan for the transportation company. and he was a mechanic for the Maine Transportation Company before he was dishonorably discharged. He got into one too many fights. Guy has a temper. Not only does he have a temper, he has a love for firearms. Hence how he gets drawn to a militia. Tank's the guy, for example, that in episode 1, when they're shooting up a meth lab, Tank has the heaviest firearm. He's the guy you expect to have the heaviest firearm. And he gets the moniker Tank not from his firearms and the firearms he uses, which, albeit, are very heavy arms. You're talking your street sweeper, you're talking your BAR, you're talking your heavy fully automatic machine gun with laser sight and a 100-round barrel clip. Tank's that guy, but he gets his moniker because he's also the group's armorer. That is, every vehicle that is used on quote-unquote patrol has been handled by or somehow modified by Tank. And that would include bulletproof armor in the case of the Humvees, front shielding, police shielding in the case of some of the bikes, and the ATVs, and the like. This is the guy who does that, which ironically was the same job he did for the transportation company. That is, he put armor on the Humvees. Maybe Sergeant Red, which is his moniker, obviously not his name. His name isn't Red. Sergeant Red is one of the other sergeants. He's the sergeant in charge of the 2nd unit. This would be the unit that you would find Knight, Farmer, and the like in. We'll get to them momentarily. But Sergeant Red is an Irishman, and a drunk one at that half of the time. He's the guy who will go to the bar on a Friday night and drink up and take patrols Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. He's a young guy in comparison to most of the leadership. A young guy to even most of the people of the squad, being in his mid to late 20s. But the guy is a tactical genius. He's read everything from Napoleon to Sun Tzu to Machiavelli when it comes to the art of war. And he understands all of it. He can quote "no guts, no glory" from heart. So he's also happens to be the group's pilot when they need to be flown somewhere. Farmer is kind of the group's sort of second in command. Not really, but it seems that more often than not, he's taking command of something. Red's always gone, so he, at the very least, is Red's second in command, Sergeant Red. Farmer's also a matriarch. He's also close to one of the oldest people in the group. And as his moniker implies, he runs a horse farm. That is, he raises horses for various equestrian arts and for slaughter. And he trades these horses mostly with Canada, although he will run horses from anywhere from mid-central Canada back to America. And largely, the person who transports for him is a person, Jeff Davis, whom we moniker Shotgun. Now, you got to distinguish between Shotgun and Farmer because Farmer's name is also Jeff, that being Jeff McKee. And Jeff McKee is, well, let's face it, he's sort of the brains and the money of the operation, but he's also the smuggler. That is, if they need to get firearms and they can't get it through legitimate means, Farmer and Shotgun have the source. Their source is in Chicago. Farmer also happens to be a relative of Mr. Norton. Mr. Norton has the moniker Bullseye. He's John Bullseye Norton. And Bullseye is the group's sniper. Self-trained, self-taught, very deadly, and his favorite gun just happens to be a 50 caliber M22. Why? Probably because that's the gun I'd like to have if I was ever in a militia. He has the M22, 50 caliber M22. And Bullseye has this great little romance thing going on with his fiancée, a girl by the name of Darcy. His ex-wife, Jean, has a drug problem, and she's in with the drug dealing element, the meth, which is the meth trade for the area. I mean, that's run by a girl by the name of Raven. And it's Jean that we really get the Bullseye story, which is Jean has screwed him over in a divorce. And as many divorces go, she got the kids. She also got the alimony, and she also got the child support, and she also spends all of that on Raven's mouth. See, she is a junkie. Now, there's a child services worker that was more than willing to take the kids, but she doesn't like the militia lifestyle Bullseye's in, and uses that against him constantly. So she'll work with Jean because Jean she can control. Sooner or later, Jean's going to do drugs. She's going to get the kids. They'll go into foster care, and she'll collect the check. And that's all she cares about is her pocketbook. However, Bullseye is the family man. He's got other kids. And while the social worker would like to take those kids too because she don't like the militia, gosh darn it, if there's not one piece of illegal activity that ever gets tied to poor Bullseye. Except for what his friend Knight causes. Now, Knight is a guy by the name of Dave McKee. And unlike all of the rest of the gentlemen that are gung ho, I mean, we are talking your die hard, hold on to their guns types of guys. Knight, with the exception of maybe a handgun or two, isn't a gun guy. Rather, he believes in the old days of chivalry and cavalry and swords. And he has a collection. This guy has so many swords, let me tell you. It's not funny how many swords this guy has. We're talking at least 50, all different styles, mostly European. He's fascinated with the story of Gawain from the King Arthur myths. Sir Gawain. And he kind of fashions himself as a modern day knight in shining armor, which gives us his story where he gets in trouble. Knight ends up involved with a girlfriend who is the ex-wife of a cop, a sheriff's officer, Officer Russell. And his wife works at the local hospital with another one of the characters, Will Medic Gardner, which doesn't need much explaining beyond that. He's the group's medic. So Knight takes it upon himself upon finding that Officer Russell is still beating the crap out of his ex-wife and will not let her date, will not let her live outside the house except to go to work because he has no control over that. And while he's remarried, she can't date. And if he sees her around another guy, she's going to get a black eye just to teach her a lesson. So, Knight takes it upon himself to take this poor woman in and deal with Officer Russell. Now, you can't very well go around killing a cop. And if you kill a cop with a sword, well, there you go. There's Knight's dilemma. who are the enemies of the militia? And right at the top of that list, we've already talked about her, is a girl named Raven. And Raven is kind of the chief person in charge of narcotics for the town, in the sense that she is the plus. She is the supplier of narcotics for the town, and the chief among those mostly is meth. Meth accounts for 90% of her business. Most of the meth is cooked in the area, distributed through the area. She is Native American, and most of her crew also happens to be Native American. So Raven ends up being this thorn throughout the whole series in the group's side, in the sense that she's not going to give up the meth trade. She makes buku bucks on it, half of which goes to the tribe, which makes the tribal people happy, putting them on one side and the militia and the non-Native American people who don't live on the reservation on the other side. And it's when you have a civic community issue that where those two collide, you tend to have tension. Raven also has a special arrangement with the North Koreans. And by North Koreans, I am talking about the North Korean government, who uses the ports of entry nearby as their sort of soft gate. That is, they can get their shipments past border security much easier through these soft gates, and frequently do so in order to secure, like for example, that their major component is a sex slave. That is, women, Chinese, primarily Chinese, Japanese, Indo-Chinese women who are bought, transported to St. John or Moncton, put on a truck, brought into America through the militia's area, and trucked into Boston, where they disappear into the sex slave trade down there. That's the Koreans' main racket. They also have a counterfeit racket. They do some drug dealing. They'll trade the meth. They'll trade the other drugs in Raven's plethora that she offers people in exchange for the meth, which they can then sell down in Boston and recoup their losses. The North Koreans, they're very business minded in the show, and so you rarely see an instance. Although in episode 1 we do see an instance of the collaboration, you rarely see an instance where these two or three rackets collide. Most of the time, it's the militia engaging the North Koreans, the militia engaging Raven and her meth dealing group, and Joshua, who's her enforcer agent there, so that she can keep her hands clean if somebody's getting killed. That component. You have an Italian component, as mentioned before. This is largely your petty larceny stuff, and there's an off again on again relationship with the Italian component, and the Italians are mainly run out of Boston, though. There's a conflict between the Boston family and the Chicago family in the series. So these are your main enemies. In addition to those enemies, you have a child protection agent who makes a great villain. I mean, let's face it. Who likes that bitch? You have Officer Russell, and a police component that is half hostile to half of the members and half non-hostile to the other members. So when Officer Russell, for example, oversteps his bounds, you have Chief Gannon, who will come out and he'll say, hey, it's Officer Russell. He's got a bit of an aggressive streak. As long as you forgive him and don't sue the department, we're good. You know? And it's that dynamic that, in one sense, is missing from TV. where you have your cop show. You expect the cops to be good guys. You expect them to be dealing with bad guys who are doing this all the time. Or you have your sort of vigilante show where you have a bunch of bad guys having a turf war with a bunch of other bad guys. You never see the sort of good guy on the wrong side of the law show anymore. And by good guy on the wrong side of the law, I don't mean that the good guys out there uh, selling drugs and selling guns and running rackets and occasionally kicks a couple sawbacks into the community. I'm talking about your real hardcore uh, group of people who's committed and devoted to the community, regardless of what some governmental agency or what some outside influence tells them. That's that's the embodiment of the show. It's taken this thing that's seen as very, very evil in our community today, the militia. When people see militia, they go, "Oh my God, a bunch of people in Montana, they're planning to blow up government buildings. They're evil, they're gun-toting thugs that enforce their will on their communities." You take a look at the characters of militia, of the show militia. These are the average guy. They're the guy down the street. They're the guy, fixing your truck. They're the guy who's providing your meat. They're the guys who, in your wildest dreams, if they weren't walking around with a uniform and an AK-47 strapped to their back, you'd think they were just normal guys. You'd love to hang out, have a beer with them. And the show embodies that. It takes that human side and brings it back. The scene in episode 2 where the militia is serving a church dinner at the Catholic Church. Well, the core part of this group that isn't Muslim is Catholic. And you see that. You see them serving this dinner at the Catholic Church, and you're like, wow. They don't have their guns there. It's just these guys in uniforms serving you soup and slop. So it's got this cool atmosphere to it. And that wholesome sense of community. There's not a whole lot of swearing in the show. Some swearing, I would point out, would probably be right now if need be. But there's not a whole lot of swearing in the show. Why? Because we're trying to portray people as good, wholesome people. Good, wholesome people don't swear. So if you're a producer, if you're an actor out there, and any of this has appealed to you, and hopefully by now you've stayed with me through this thought process, I encourage you to take the link down there in the bottom. It's by the Opines, which is the email address, and shoot out an email. Or you can leave an opine in the opine box with an address to contact you, and I'll contact you out of the same email. Either case, and I'd encourage people not to spam the email. Very important. One click and you ain't spamming me anymore. Very important. So if you're of that, don't even have to be an American. I mean, it's a show in the sense that it takes place in America, but it doesn't have to be an American company producing it. Could just as easily be a Canadian company. I'll go to Halifax. I'll freaking schlep down to Eastport, hop a boat, be there, next day. I'll go to Halifax. I'll go to freaking Vancouver, wherever. Across the pond, over in London, Sydney, Brisbane, Australia, Bombay. Anybody who wants to do the show about the militia in America, hey, it works on your TV, great. If not, you can always export. And you can always get somebody here in America to do it, because once you've got like a pilot and a couple episodes, suddenly people want to do the project. But just having the script, apparently, I'm busting my buns sometimes trying to get these scripts out. So anyhow, to wrap things up, you have Militia. It's a core family value show. It's the type of show that, other than the gun violence, you could probably do at the prime time spot. And the gun violence is can't remember one scene that somebody got shot. Um, no, I take that back. I can't. But for the large part, that's the only thing that's going to hold this show back. There's not a whole lot of swearing. There's not a whole lot of sex scenes. There's not a whole lot of trying to portray the bad boy image. And that's what makes this different. It's like The Sopranos at 8 o'clock. Anyhow, I've rambled on enough. I got 6 other shows I got to sell tonight because I'm going to be busy through the rest of the week. So anyhow, email downstairs. Do it. Don't do it. If you don't pick it up, somebody will. Y'all have a good day.